right, this is the Committee on Government Operations, Public Safety, and Public Service. This is Monday, January 30th, 2017. We're at 6 p.m. Council McKinnon.
Yep.
Council Capone. Yep. Council Del Sol.
Yep.
Council McLaughlin.
Present.
We have full members present. We do have a call.
Please stand and salute the flag. Before we start, a lot of these pieces, with the exception of one, are carryover pieces, so we're going to be acting on them tonight to see if we can either refer back or send them out. Please read, actually,
Mr. President, can I make a motion that we suspend Rule 17 and we take item number 7 off the calendar, please?
motion made to suspend Rule 17. All those in favor? All those opposed, the ayes have it. And take item number 7 off the calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it.
All right, item number 7. This is a resolution by Council Richard Del Sol and Michael McLaughlin regarding an update on the Eversource project on Main Street.
Mr.
Councilman
Chairman,
McLaughlin.
may I invite up the representative of Eversource, please,
So
to
moved.
join us?
Please state your names and titles and what company you're here representing.
My name is Bill Zamparelli. I'm the Community Relations Representative with Eversource Energy. And with me is Michael Sweeney, who's the manager of Conduit Group for Eversource, and John Kiersey, who's with
John, you can have a seat over here.
W.A. Chester. He's our pipeline consultant. And Mike Sutton, who's our traffic management consultant from the Neshagen, and he's going to make a brief presentation tonight. I think you had a chance to see this last Monday.
Was this the same presentation at a council meeting?
It's the same presentation, but
Do we, gentlemen, do we need to see this again, or it was once already produced before us?
Me personally, I'm all set. My other colleagues, it's,
To the colleagues, Councilman Capone, are you all set with it? Councilman McLaughlin? Councilman Del Solo?
I'm all set. Can we just leave it on in case we have a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it pops
If
up.
we could
Great.
just have
All
it
set.
on, and, I can't see it, whatever. That's fine, all right. But,
we do have
yeah,
a
you
Google
can- you can
Maps
have a
that
seat.
might be
Excellent, thank you.
helpful.
Or
If
just
anybody has
right
questions,
there,
they can
in
call
case
up
they
Google
wanna get a
Maps to
follow-up or something.
identify an area or something.
Okay.
All right, questions and answers on this, please. Councilman McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Zampatelli. Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I just have several questions that I have asked other contractors. We had a large construction project done on Ferry Street by National Grid. It was a huge inconvenience to the neighborhood, as I'm sure all of us can agree that when you're working overnight in front of somebody's home, it's an inconvenience to the resident. I mean, that's pretty reasonable that any one of us really wouldn't want this in front of our homes. I did receive a couple of phone calls from some constituents and a short video that I can show you that I have on my cell phone in the back room of jackhammering being done around 4 o'clock in the morning last Friday evening out on Broadway. It kept the several residents awake all night long. And what I had told the National Grid was, if we could try to do that type of work earlier in the evening, I know you guys are going to have to do this at nighttime, and I explained that to the residents, and they were very understandable. But if we can try to do that type of loud construction, everything's loud, right? Moving machines, everything's loud. But the real impact and phase
We agree.
earlier in the evening versus later in the evening could really help satisfy some of the residents in that neighborhood.
Totally understand, and typically we've done projects like that, and what we typically tell the contractors who have our inspectors with them, as well as the supervisor, that after 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, no jackhammering, no chipping. I know that when we were out here originally, we were doing that because we initially thought that it was twofold, that we potentially had an oil leak, which would have been an environmental problem, and we were trying to find a fault. So that's why initially when we met with the DPW guys, we had told them that until we find that fault, this would have to work around the clock. But we have had discussions when this project gets going, if and when we get permission to do so, that the heavy work that we would be doing civil-wise, it would be my contractors that do the civil work. they know that after 8 or 9 o'clock, no jackhammer at all.
That's
You
really-
may hear some movement of plates if we have to move plates off of trenches, but that will be minimal.
We'll work to keep all of the noisy aspects of the construction to daytime hours to the best of our ability. This work that was done prior to our meeting last Monday was really emergency work to try to identify the location of the transition joint and the fault as Mike had identified. So we didn't know where that was. We knew generally where the pipeline went, but we did not know where that joint was or where the pipeline fault was. And this was necessary to try to determine, what the problem was, and if we did have a leak. If we did have a leak, that was a significant issue that we'd have to address immediately.
And to be honest, to your credit, you guys did notify us before that work was going to start, before the Friday. I received a phone call from your
Correct.
company that we were going to do this work throughout that Friday and throughout that evening. So it wasn't like it was a surprise. When I got the phone calls, I knew exactly what was going on. I was able to give direct information and clarification because of your due diligence of notifying the counselors and the city of Everett. So kudos to you guys for not just coming in here and jamming this down our throats. So I credit you guys for that. We just need to make sure that we're all on the same page because it is right across the street from there. You have a senior complex at 66 Main Street. You
Yes.
have the Charleston Chew Loft condominium condos. You have Main Street, which has left and right side streets off of it. It is a congested residential neighborhood. So making sure that we're all on the same page is really key to make this as successful as possible because it has to get done. We
No,
all know that
understood.
that
And we'll-
work has to get done. What are the work hours that you guys are going to try to primarily work under?
Well, normally it's basically 7 to 6 p.m., I think it is those are typical work hours. But I think what we would want to do is to look at what would make, the aspects of this project are going to go 24 hours a day because of the freeze pits that we have to have on either end. We're going to be opening a dielectrically cooled line that basically has a fluid inside that's used to cool the line. The way we're able to break that line and maintain it is by freezing the line with all of the coolant in it. And that way we're able to break the line, do the work, repair, cut out a section, pull in new cable, and then resplice it in, and then repair the pipeline.
Counselor, from the chair, on that mention of that, how noisy is that going to be, and how long is that going to be going on for throughout the night?
So if I may, the physical work of the excavation of the two pits, our plan is we would work 2 crews on each pit, and the expectation would be that they would work from, again, 7 a to 7 o'clock p.m. at night. We anticipate that it would be 2 days for each crew to open up the pits. Once we do that, we would plate it, and then the next crews that would come in would be W.A. Chester, and they would start to set up, keeping in mind that we have a good traffic plan, I believe, to set up barriers and police officers to do the traffic plan. And then I would turn it over to Chester, and they can talk about their duration once they do the setup work and what they have to do in terms of freezing the line and then removing the cable and splicing the cable, and that's going to be the duration. And then when that would be done, they would turn the work back over to our civil group, where we would backfill concrete over the pipe, and we do a temp pave, and then we had talked earlier about setting up some barriers with the Public Works Director and do the permanent paving and markings in the spring.
Okay, just reason being is because this committee's had other companies up, other big companies up before us, and what we've basically explained to them is that, we're going to give you these hours, we're going to allot you that amount of time to do this, but it's not going to be at the residents' demise. So,
Understood.
just as we should, you might want to relay that message to them again, Counselor, and then have their contact information. Have contact information so that the residents can actually be on board with this. And then if there need to be, where there was a situation already at 4 a.m. in the morning, if there's a problem, they can call directly to someone, reach them, and say, what's going on here? You know
Mr.
what I
Chairman,
mean?
on that note, these gentlemen did provide me with contact information the Friday when I had spoke to them. I had their contact. They've been very open. We've seen some
Oh,
contractors
good.
that have not been as transparent and as
That's why
as
we're trying to
open.
avoid those situations.
But these gentlemen truly have been transparent and open and working with the neighborhood and with myself.
Right.
So on that, I agree with you, but I think that they've already done a fair job at making themselves as available as possible. There are
Sure.
some other questions that I have that I'll yield the floor to my colleagues, but that I do want to go circle back to some of my other questions.
Councilman Del Sol?
Just so that people know, I know there was someone at 24 hours at the freeze pits, and there'll be 2 details at each pit. Is that the plan?
So I think we outlined what, on the traffic management plan, but as another project, we recognize this is a very, very busy area. We did speak with, I think, Sergeant Bover initially when we were
Yes.
setting up here. We said that we would do whatever we needed to do to make sure that you had flexibility with police officers. So if whatever you tell us to do, we'll get them hired. He did say at the time that it's difficult with other projects that you had going on in the city to get police officers, but if it's 2 or 3 at each location, we'll gladly do so, and if you need something else in between that to keep the traffic going during busy time, we're not opposed to that either.
I think it might be a little easier this time of year. There's not much, projects don't start up till March or April. So I think the availability of details will be there.
Good.
And to the residents that are watching this, if they're working in front of your house and you have a question, don't be afraid to just walk down your stairs and talk to the police officer or the gentleman working from Eversource. Just ask them the question. You get a quicker answer that way.
Correct.
Absolutely.
I know with the winter coming with snow, I know you have a plan. If any snow has to be removed, you guys remove it at the 2 work sites.
Correct.
And the plows will be able to get by with the city. There will be no parking signs on the opposite side of the street, so
Yep.
the flow of traffic won't be interrupted.
Not a problem. So, I mean, if there's an anticipated snowstorm, a backhoe will be at the site, and if we need to haul snow, we'll get a 10-wheeler, and we'll haul the snow out of there.
And just one more question. If we're talking 7 in the morning at 6, I know the ones on the digging itself, would it be an idea of, with the traffic going down Main Street on 99, if they started at 9 o'clock? Would that too much impact on your production?
And reason being for that, it's a tough area. A lot of traffic going in and out of Boston area, and also schools in that area, so.
Yeah, so
Not a bad
instead of
idea.
working at 7 in the morning, go 9 in the morning to 4 or 5 or 6, whatever you want to do. Even late in the day might have the impact also. The morning's the big crucial point.
Just to add to that, that was the reasoning behind shifting the traffic and creating the full-time work zone so that they can work starting at 7. They should not be impeding the public way at that hour. Obviously, any deliveries or anything else that they need to make, we're going to have nitrogen tanks that will need to be switched out from time to time, and other materials to and from the site. That will all be done off-peak, outside the peak traffic periods, obviously.
Yeah, my
But-
plan is to put a tanker in there to avoid, delivering and refilling doers.
Yep.
So we'd have a tanker in there that'll probably cover the freeze.
Will it cover the whole duration?
Yeah, I
Okay.
might have to fill it once, but my plan is to freeze, get the line taken apart, put, night cap that line, and then break the freeze so that we don't have nitrogen running 24/7.
Okay.
And the last thing, the lighting on the job sites at each end. I know it'll be tough till you get out there to zoom on, only on the work area itself, because people are gonna say my house is lit up all night long and I can't sleep, and how it goes from there. So
Yep,
just
we can be-
throwing ideas out there, and you guys.
We
do
can
it
be
for
mindful of
years.
that. I mean, the intent is with all this work, we have one of my inspectors that are on site at all times, and there's going to be a gentleman by the name of Matt Veens, who probably sent you a couple of emails,
I know
Counselor. He's going to be the project manager on site, so he's going to own that. If you have any questions, as well as I think Bill had talked about setting up a possible hotline. So my phone's on 24/7. Matt will be there, and if you have any questions, we'll work with you whenever way we can to minimize the impact. I mean, I recognize it's a busy area. We did a job last week in front of St. Elizabeth's in Brighton, 400 feet of pipe we had to put in. We shut it down at 7 o'clock at night, obviously in front of a hospital, so we recognize that.
All right, thank you.
Councilman McLaughlin.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments regarding community outreach. We will be flyering the neighborhoods to let all of the abutters know how to contact us. We'll provide contact information. I believe we'll have a web page up on the Eversource site that will be able to give them a status of where the project is and what's going on, the nature of the work, and contact numbers if necessary. The flyering will probably take place this week, so we'll be arranging that with a company that does delivery. But we actually did provide a sample flyer to Jerry Navarra at the DPW, and I think, we'll work with him to tune that up and make sure it addresses all of the concerns.
And as well, I think we talked, Bill, about if we wanted to, we gladly can install message boards at either end talking
That's
about
right.
the work, if that helps to
Right.
notification.
We're hoping an early warning will actually
Right.
let,
Especially at
get
the-
people to defer from that route.
Yeah,
At the
absolutely.
Rotary and things like that, so that people understand what the nature of the work is and the duration, so they'll understand what we're doing. We will have, and this is where Mike's presentation would actually be helpful, we will have the traffic management plan that was initially developed, which really talked about trying to maintain 2 lanes, one in each direction in front of Main Street, and I think it was 2 lanes in each direction on Lower Broadway. The one thing that I believe, and maybe you can explain this, John, is about pulling cable, because that's a probably a noisy operation, because we'll be pulling cable out and we're pulling new cable in. And so we'll try to restrict that to hours where it's not going to impact the neighborhood. But I don't know how long that takes.
Well, the cable itself
Could you
is,
speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry. The cable itself is, I mean, the reels coming out are gonna be 130 inches tall. They're gonna weigh about 40,000 pounds apiece. There's quite, an elaborate setup to get those to be safely handled and lined up so that we could pull cable. And again, we have a winch truck. We're talking about trying to do that on the weekends to try to stay out of the, but we are gonna be kind of a spectacle when we show up. I mean, it's,
And that's probably the most, I guess, disruptive portion
Right.
for the project. Once we pull cable, then once it's in, then we will be setting up work zones over the manholes to actually do the splicing. And that's a relatively quiet process and.
Yeah, again,
shouldn't
we
have
set up a
impact.
clean room in the manhole. We usually have a trailer on top of it for, our working for the guys. That's a 24/7 operation. Once I open that cable, I've got to keep going till it's closed back up. We create environmentally controlled atmosphere there so that we don't get any moisture into the cable and stuff. But again, it's pretty quiet. Usually we'll have a 75 kW generator running. We use whisper quiet machines. I think the most complaints I've ever really got was people could maybe smell diesel fuel.
And again, and those are the things that people at home, I also, as I was talking to some residents this past week, there's going to be inconveniences from time to time. Nobody can believe that a project of this magnitude is going to go without any interruptions. But at the end of the day, it's for the betterment of the community. It's betterment for the city. So if you have to deal with a night that's unfortunately a little bit noisier than the other nights, you got to kind of meet the middle of the road as well. And that's on you guys. I don't want it to be like you guys are forced to keep everything at stray, because sometimes things go off track and sometimes things go stray and something has to be adapted one way or another to get the job done. And I'm in construction like Councilor Del Solar and you guys, and we know that those things come up from time to time. But tonight's meeting was just about the generalized operation of how this was all going to play out. We have snow coming. We're going to have road plates out there. We have road plates right now on Lower Broadway from you guys. I want to make sure that plows can plow streets safely. Nobody's going to get hurt from an impact of, hitting a steel plate in the street with a plow. Somebody's going to end up going through a windshield of a vehicle. I've said that numerous times, and you guys all agree with that. So those are the types of things that I'm looking, as the counselor from the area, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, to just kind of get on the same page and know that we're all working together. And things kind of come up from time to time, and we can all talk about it, whether it's, on a phone call or a meeting on site or whatever the case might be. But you guys have truly been good partners to come into the city and work with us the way you have, and I appreciate what you guys have done so far. Just one last question. How long is the project duration total?
It's 9 weeks.
9 weeks?
Weather permitting. Obviously, if the weather is adverse, then we may not have to be able to work that, but that's what we're figuring, beginning to middle of April at the latest.
Okay. In one of the work zones that you have, I'm going to bring it to my colleagues' attention so they may be aware of it as well. At the edge of somebody's driveway, you guys are going to set up one of these tents, one of these pop-up tents, if you will. Is that individual, without saying names, going to have access to and from his home from his driveway, because I don't want to inconvenience any residents in the city of Everett in that way.
There is one house, as I understand it, that we are going to be blocking the driveway and the access, and we have spoken with that gentleman. And we will try to identify an alternate parking space on Winthrop Street.
Okay.
And we'll also, we've actually made arrangements to take care of his trash put out on Mondays, I believe it was, so that, we will try to accommodate any concerns he has. He has our contact methods also, so he would be able to,
And that's probably the one individual that is going to be impacted the most on this
I
project,
couldn't agree more.
to be truthful.
When I saw where it was, I said, oh,
So,
And
you
again,
know it, you know?
but again, I don't want this to be like we're making any special privileges
no,
for
it isn't.
anybody. We're just going through the motions of making sure that nobody's inconvenienced.
Right.
Whomever it may be, I don't want anybody to feel as though somebody's being treated differently. It's just that home ends up being probably the most impacted over the course of 9 weeks.
Understood. And again, I mean, as you knowing, being in the business, if there's something that happens during the day that doesn't go right, and there's a reason why we have to do something later at night, it's my expectation that you'll be communicated to ahead of time. You're not gonna be blindsided by it. That's
Great,
not-
and,
that's not how we operate.
and that I appreciate
Yeah.
greatly, because just recently, we were kind of blindsided on National Grid. We had to bring them up here to talk about a project in my ward that they kind of started without ever notifying. I got about 20 phone calls in one day. The whole neighborhood was interrupted, and I was blindsided. And I'm glad that you guys have come in the city the way you have, and I'm going to yield the floor to my colleagues, but thank you for coming and talking with me tonight.
Councilman Capone.
Let me also
Thank you, Mr.
just say
Chairman.
that I have reached out to the backyard management, and I've been waiting to hear back from them. We just wanted to advise them of the impacts on their operations and what's going on there. So we will work with them to try to address any of their concerns. But we have made initial efforts to try to reach them, and we'll follow up on that.
Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our guests. So just a few quick questions. The duration said roughly 9 weeks. Is this around the clock? I know you're going to try to stop the heavy type of operation
Well,
at a certain hour.
the pipe freeze is always going to be 24 hours a day, and that's,
So will there always be somebody on site while all
Yes.
that's going
Yes.
on?
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
Presence there.
all right. And as far as traffic, any rerouting of traffic, what do you have? Or is it going to pretty much follow the same lines?
right now, I don't think we saw any traffic changing. We're based on what Mike Sutton has been able to put together, it looks like we're going to be able to maintain 2 10-foot lanes in front of the Main Street work site, and
Is that
then I
enough for a
think
bus
it's
site?
two lanes in each direction in front of the Broadway location. Is that correct, Mike?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And-
And that's based on what we've been able to find. Now, that means that plating, the existing transition joint would remain plated, though.
Yes.
To do that. When we actually have to pull cable at that location, then things would have to be adjusted at that point. But generally, that's a 1-week process,
Okay.
you know.
And you talked about your openness to as many detail offices as you need, which is good to hear. With the 10-foot wide lanes, is that enough for a bus or any other heavy vehicle to get by there? Or would you have to do the alternating of
I
traffic?
believe they will be able to maintain 2 10-foot lanes. And you may be able to better speak to that, Michael.
It will be tight, especially with the turns that they need to make, but the shift out and back is relatively shallow. We tried to keep everything compressed. We have an existing signal on the north side. We don't want to be impacting that. But also, to the south, we don't want to impact any more parking than we have to. We already have to relocate 1 handicap spot. Further to the south, I believe we're taking a handful of parking on what would be the west side of Main Street, heading southbound.
Off that question, Counselor, would that maintain a flow for emergency vehicles such as fire apparatus or anything? like that?
Absolutely, and that was the intent, is our only other option we looked at, the only other option we had was a detour, which nobody wanted to do, primarily for public safety reasons. We figured it was better to have
Sure.
2 10s than a detour.
Absolutely. As long as they can make it by, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Counselor?
Thank you. And with regards to that, I would say that at a minimum, you're looking at least 2. You're probably going to need maybe an additional one if you start getting into any kind of vehicle that might be wide enough that's going to require an alternation of traffic going in either direction. And then the last question I have was regarding the tanker. that you had mentioned, rather than having it refilled, just gonna have one on site. Is that gonna stay on site the entire duration? Will that leave on a daily basis? Does that present any kind of public safety issues at all?
It's compressed gas. Nitrogen is an inert gas. It's, what we do is we just cycle it through the coils on the pipe. It disperses into the air. You know, sometimes there's some hissing at certain points.
Okay.
But,
It's
that would
not
be
explosive.
24 for about 2 or 3 days, and then what I'm gonna do is try to shut that down by,
Okay.
you know, once I get the pipe pulled apart, I can cap it and let that go. I'll keep the tanker there, but I will be putting Jersey barriers around that tanker.
Okay.
So in the event we did have a car that went Ori on us.
And that was my concern. I just wanna make sure that we're
And it's a
addressing.
compressed container, that's
Okay.
really the only liability, say. I
Okay.
mean,
It's not an explosive.
Right, it's not explosive, it doesn't.
Good, as long as we, I mean, I'm sure that's your business, you know what you're doing.
I
So
deal
I
with
just
this
wanna make sure
people's
that.
questions
yeah.
constantly.
Just wanna make sure we're
The
taking care of
neighbors,
any
I'm
public
sure,
safety
will
issues.
wanna
so.
know what type of science project we're running down there, so.
Thank you very much. I have no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Who do we have now? These are follow-up questions, gentlemen? And then, okay. Because we have audience out here now waiting.
I just got two follow-up questions. I just want
Councilman McLaughlin?
to bring to their attention. One is,
Yep.
I would like to see 2 police officers on both ends. I think it's very reasonable that we have 2 on both ends. So if we can do that, I do have some concern because I know the manpower of our police department is getting thinner as construction of other projects open up. So if we could try to get a plan in place sooner than later to try to coordinate with the police department, because I honestly don't want to see you guys out there working without any police details at all. With the main streets for your safety and the safety
Yeah,
of
we
the
don't
of the
wanna be there
residents.
without an officer.
I don't want to see that, but, and the other thing is just, if you could just keep in mind that Tyleston Street becomes real busy twice a day, which is, Tyleston Street, which is the corner of Tyleston and Main, because of the Adams School down on Tyleston Street. It becomes real busy in the morning, kids going into school, and I think they have early release there because it's an elementary school. So if you could just kind of keep that in mind, so that the flow of traffic in to and from the Adams School is not impacted dramatically. The parents, I'm sure, across that neighborhood would be very appreciative of that. I just want to bring that to your attention, and I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you guys over the next 9 weeks, and I know we'll have a successful project.
And understood too, I mean, as we set up there, if we feel the need that there are areas that require another detail officer, we're certainly not opposed to doing that during the busy times at night. Typically in Boston, when we do it, we usually have more police officers during the day on the 7A to 7P shift, the 7P to 7A shift on the nighttime, a little bit quieter, so you may be able to minimize, but we'll work whatever we need to make that happen.
Right.
No, and what we do, you know, we work in the city continually. My gentlemen are very, you know, sensitive to people's residents, and we understand that, you know, no one wants us out front, and if it was my house, I'd be as irate as everyone else. So we try to help out a lot, you know, I mean, if the guys, if we're interfering with someone's entryway or something, you know, we'll go out of our way to make sure they get taken care of.
Nope. Again, kudos to you guys. You've done a good job so far, and I look forward to the
Thank you.
next time.
Any other questions, gentlemen?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Just a
Councilman
comment.
Palazzolo?
I want the residents to know there'll be no loss of power. It's electrical work being done, but there'll be no loss of power in any houses, in the residence,
No,
in
just-
Everett, or even in work area. I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Your pleasure on, thank you. Your
I'm
Excuse
good.
customary thanks.
Excuse me,
Thank you,
customary
gentlemen.
thanks. I
Thank
would-
you. And your pleasure on the piece. Pleasure on the piece, gentlemen?
Can I refer this
Back.
back to
The regular?
regular council meeting?
Yep.
And for a report in 4 weeks to the body as a whole of how things are going.
Request
So that
of-
if there's any snafus that might pop up, we have an opportunity to address them.
Request a report back,
Yes.
written or verbal?
A written report.
A written report, I think, is fine, unless something comes up that we need to change that, but a written report in 4 weeks of how progress is going.
Are they gonna give the council a written report? How do you wanna word that? How do you wanna work it?
I'm gonna ask my colleagues I'm gonna lean on Council Capone to ask what he thinks.
You can go
I mean,
written?
I'll tell you what we've done in the past, and I'll certainly offer it up. We can send an update out to whomever you want at the end of each week.
All right, what I'll do is, we'll do this, report back to the committee, actually to the regular common council, what we're planning on do with this piece, as well as a written report back from the gentleman here from Eversource to the council within 4 weeks.
Yep, that's great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it, you have done so. Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank you.
appearing. You're
Could
all
I just
set.
ask one question? We were just looking to know when we could start. Is that something that,
This goes to the full body, so it'll
Okay.
be at our next meeting. After that, we'll approve it, and then you're all set.
okay.
One other question I had, the work that we did last week, because we were doing an excavation to look for the existing transmission pipe, we made that trench bigger than we needed to.
Through the chair, sir.
With weather coming in on next week, we were hoping to try and close that thing up, which is a day or a day and a half's worth of work.
Yeah.
We're looking to see if you may be all right.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm a little surprised. Caught off guard that we have to send this back to the full body for a vote of the body before granted. I thought we were going to be able to.
That's how it was worked out. We were gonna put this in, yeah, we're a subcommittee, we report back to the body. So once that is done and the body is notified,
What if I refer this piece back to sponsor? There's nothing to report out to the committee.
you have to report. No, it has to go back to the committee, as a whole, the whole body. Reason being is it came out of there. So if it didn't do that, then we wouldn't have to go through that step. But since it did, that's what we had to do.
Mr. President, do you understand, right, that the next council meeting is on February 13th?
I understand. That's
Can
just
we-
it's our procedure on how to do it.
Can we
We-
give a special?
Hold on.
Yeah. I guess what I was wondering is, could we continue with the existing emergency work that we were doing? Well, that's what we were. Right. I think we could live with next Monday on the larger portion, if we can at least backfill this existing, and correct the plate, because if there is adverse weather coming in, we think it's gonna be best for the community.
Right, yeah.
I think, yeah. I think, you know,
I think we're
We can-
prepared to make that repair tomorrow.
Yeah,
if-
well, we
If
can
we
make
in
the-
fact get the
Gentlemen,
permission.
I'd like to actually, okay, this piece can be referred out, but we would still have to go through another procedure to actually have further licensing and stuff like that.
Can we ask our city clerk to come before us if he would so?
Could we have the city clerk come before us? Just state your name and title for the record, please.
Yeah, this was just a resolution. This particular piece can just be referred back out to the sponsor. There's nothing that would be further from there. But the utility work, I believe needs the whole publishing, public hearing, all that kind of stuff. Same as National Grid and everyone else does.
Was that actually done, gentlemen?
I can speak to that. Typically, the only reason that this would have to be referred to, back to a public process is if it was a new line that was not already installed or granted. This is maintenance on an
It's
existing line.
maintenance on the existing. This is
Correct.
not going to a new pole or to a new,
Correct, it's staying in the existing
you're not
facility.
adding service to a brand-new place, for instance.
They're
Correct.
removing, they're
Okay,
removing
no,
and
okay, then we need
replacing.
to,
Yeah, we need to give them an okay.
no, because it's maintenance. It's when a new construction, new
existing
pole,
locations.
if you notice, most of the things that came up before us before were either things that didn't exist previously, or were providing service, new service to a present location or new location, but they were providing new service. Yes,
All right,
yes,
so
they work with the
the request here would be to send this out here.
Out committee,
favorably.
either favorably, or it doesn't matter. I would issue a report. If it was me, I would issue a report on what you've learned here today and how you want to take what you've learned today and apply it to other new projects that go on, how you'd like the ones that you do approve to be handled based on what these gentlemen gave you today that you seem to be pleased with. I'd issue a report saying, you know, from now on, this is how we want it handled. We held this committee. While we don't have any say on this particular project, we like some of the suggestions that were made by the company, and we'd like these are the things we're going to ask future new services to provide. Right. That's it, just down to the DPW, make sure everything's fine with them,
So
and make all the arrangements that they
favorable
said.
action with a report.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't really need favorable action because you're not voting on anything. Your report is what's coming out of the committee.
Okay.
Is that you've issued this report, and the subject matter can be referred back to
Gentlemen,
council.
on the issue.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Zimtelli, one of you gentlemen, what does this impact if we give me the flip side of this coin, right? What happens if it doesn't go forward, or if you guys can't start till 14th and 13th?
No, they don't need
We don't need to do
They
that.
just have to be with DPW.
Right now, they meet with DPW.
Okay.
Once they get clearance from here, Councilman Capone.
If I could, I think the only thing that's really left is whether or not the sponsors want to request a report within the 4-week period or whatever
Sure.
it was. The work is going to go forward, they just got to coordinate with the police department and DPW.
And DPW. The motion here that should be made was to just ask for the report after the 4-week period, and also allow them to go to DPW and as well the police department for their details.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to have them appear before DPW and the police department to furnish whatever they need for details, and also the surrounding areas to set up whatever they have to set up for their production. Also, the other one would be a report back from the Eversource to the council as a whole in 4 weeks, written.
Correct.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, can we suspend the rules and take item number
Thank you.
5?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much appreciated.
All right, thanks again.
Can we suspend the rules and take item number 5?
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules, take item number 5. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so.
Right, item number 5, this order by Council McKinnon and Matusky, candidates for the election process.
Can we have the city clerk before us, please?
Thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you. You got it? Bye-bye. State your name and title, please, once again, sir.
Mike Matarazzo, City Clerk.
Thank you for coming, and this is my piece, so I'll speak on it from the chair. Mr. Clerk, this piece has been here since last year. We've been going back and forth on it. We've been gaining information on it. Would it be feasible to have this go before the new commission?
Yes, because it's a far more complex issue than you'd imagine. I happen to have looked up a case that I sent to Council Capone. Didn't have a chance to look at it today. But there was a case back in the 70s regarding residency. It was Hirschkopf versus the City of Worcester,
Yeah.
where people were denied the right to register to vote. And I just want to give you one of them really quickly. And off the top of your head, think about this gentleman has come in to be a candidate. And how would he ever, qualify? And gentleman's name in the lawsuit, well, Hirschkopf was there, but I'll do Hirschkopf. Hirschkopf at one time lived in Nassau County, New York. His family was split up, basically. He leased an apartment in New York City in his own name. His father lived there on some occasions. His father worked on Long Island, came to visit during the weekend. Hirschkopf left the country for 6 months using a passport issued in New York and registered for the draft in Bombay, India. After returning, he was registered, after returning, he went on vacation in California. In the fall of '70, he registered as a student at Clark in Worcester, using the address of the New York apartment. At the time of the board hearing in March '72, this is after he tried to register and they held a board hearing denying him, he was 20 years old, was still a student at Clark. living in a dorm. His father was living in Nassau County, but Hirschkopf had never lived at his father's current home for more than 2 years and had not been living in New York City. His tuition was being paid by the university. His father was aiding in his support and claimed him as an exemption on his federal tax return. He never registered to vote, had no driver's license, no longer had a bank account. He did not regard New York as his home. He considered Worcester his home. He was active in a political campaign there, hoped to run for public office there. He had no present intention of leaving Worcester. He planned on staying there at least 1 more year, possibly longer. The court found that he was a resident of Worcester.
My question, Mr. Clerk, is the charter says that a ward councilman shall live within the ward and a domicile within the ward. That's in our charter.
Right.
Specific. It's law to us. So how would that,
Well,
what you're stating,
if
how would
you're-
that justify us having
Exactly.
someone come
If-
out from
if the
outside New
person-
York or somewhere to do that?
If the person is a married person, it becomes very easy to prove their domicile. Where are they? Where's their wife? Where are their children? Where are their children got? Makes it easy.
Do they actually have a license that would actually say that, or a tax bill that would actually say that they live there, or something to that?
A married person. Once you get into somebody who's not married, now it becomes totally different.
But a license would say that they would live there. If they-
Two of these, both of the,
Massachusetts state license.
out of these 3 people who were involved in that court case, 2 of them, one had a Pennsylvania license, the other one had a New York license. To them, to the court, it did not prove that they did not live in Worcester, just because their license said elsewhere.
Now, what if we went further, like they do in Boston, because we've done a little bit of homework in Boston as well. They have a residency stipulation in Boston
For employment,
for employment.
Right.
But you could also apply it towards what we're trying to do here. Reason being is because of the simple fact that in our charter, it states you must live within the domicile that you are running and trying to represent. So, I mean, it's under the pains and
perjury, I know, yeah.
It's under the penalty of that, I understand, but, for
How do
the sake
you,
of debate,
how do you prove it?
but
That's the problem.
That's where I'm saying, I mean, I think you have to go a step forward and say, well, if challenged, then you would have to produce
Oh,
X, Y, Z.
And anybody, not just a candidate, any resident of the city of Everett has the right to challenge anybody's right to be a candidate.
Absolutely.
That is in state law. Anyone can challenge, saying, I'm challenging this on the basis that this gentleman, this lady, does not live where they say they live. And that's how it starts. And then the Election Commission would hold a hearing. As I said before, I actually attended one that was held maybe 20 years ago.
Sure.
And, yeah, anyone can challenge it. Need not be the candidate. It can be anyone who just feels smited because this person, as far as they're concerned, should not be on the ballot.
Okay. So what my recommendation would be is that we would send this before the commission, bring them, give them ample time to actually research it, and then to bring us back their results at that point.
And don't forget,
Maybe
they're also
possibly-
guilty of perjury. If
Oh, yeah.
indeed they do not, they're guilty of perjury as well.
And what is the fine or the sentencing on that?
I don't know, I'd have to defer to, what's that roughly, Counselor, if I may,
Councilman
through the chair?
Capone?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that if you have perjury, you're looking at a fine, imprisonment, or both. Just a matter of the
I would
So
think
duration.
fine or imprisonment?
So, and then to speak to the point about the folks with the different licenses, I think the process would be a totality of circumstances. So you look at all the different aspects, everything that the individual would claim ties them to the community, and then you weigh it out. And it's like,
Sure,
okay,
yes.
is there enough there? Is it sufficient enough to say that they live where they claim they live versus elsewhere? And that's. what
And
they-
if I may, that's where I think it's frustrating. The frustrating part of it is that it even says in the Secretary of State's booklet that there is no definite definition, there's no satisfactory definition of residence. And the problem is, it goes case by case.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, to that point, it's almost a thing where there isn't any upfront proof. You're taking someone on their oath, their honor, that this is where they live, and then it's only if it gets questioned, it becomes an after-the-fact thing where you weigh it out and you determine
What if they,
where they are.
now, my question to that
Sure.
would be, what if they questioned it before, during, or after?
They can question it, you know,
Before and
any, I mean, obviously, before the ballots were printed, there is a timetable.
And
You
what
have
is that?
so many days, I don't have it in front of me, but it must be challenged so many days before the candidates are certified, all the signatures are certified and
So
everything.
before it goes to the state for certification, they have to check?
Well,
the
here,
certificate. Oh,
before it
yeah.
goes to
Okay.
the election commission for certification.
All right.
Right. And real quickly, the other tough part in the residency book is how many times it mentions intention. What is the person's intention? Wow, how do you go in a court of law and challenge somebody's intention? We don't know their intent, we can't read their mind. But that's what came down in the court cases. It's a very difficult question.
I think it needs to be definitely looked at because
Yeah.
of the two circumstances we
Yeah.
currently are
Oh,
living
it
now
wasn't,
with.
it wasn't 20, like,
Yeah, that was a good one, yeah.
Yeah,
That was a
I
good
know.
one, too. But I think because of the way the charter reads.
Yep.
And the way that,
Yes.
you know, we got situations that may
No,
or may
it's a
not have
legitimate,
root-
it's a
root.
legitimate question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's. a
Unfortunately,
safe and-
proving it is so frustrating.
Yeah, well, that won't be up to us, it'll be up to the newly hired commission. to do
Absolutely.
that. Councilman, are you done, Councilor Capone? Councilman McLaughlin, then Councilman Delasola.
Mr. Chairman, through you to our city clerk, Mr. Matarazzo, in the law, does it state the amount of time you have to spend in a dwelling to consider residency?
No.
So I have property in Las Vegas, New York, and Massachusetts. I'm a single
I knew
guy.
you were a wealthy man.
Secretly, of course.
What is, I can declare any of those three, and that was just hypothetical.
Yes.
I can clear any three of those by
One of those
residency.
you can consider you couldn't be registered to vote in all three, but yes, you could consider one of them your domicile. This is what I intend, or I consider my home.
Right. So,
My
but it
home
doesn't
is
say
here.
how often throughout the course of a year you have to
No.
stay, to sleep at a particular
No.
home to be considered your
Yeah.
domicile.
One night, yeah, you may decide just to sleep in that.
Did you just say you could vote in 3 locations?
No,
All right. I wanted to
I said you cannot.
You gotta pick and choose where you're gonna vote.
Right.
If you do it
You
that way.
can declare where you're gonna vote out of, but it doesn't specifically state, if I spend 3/4 of my time out of Everett, Massachusetts, I can still have Everett as my home residency.
It's sort of like this, the snowbirds that go from Michigan
Yep.
to Florida. They can vote in Michigan if they're in Michigan, or they can vote in Florida if they're in Florida, correct?
No,
Okay.
they can vote one or the other.
One or the other. but
They
have
cannot
to
be
choose.
registered in 2 states.
Okay, so they would be registered in the state that they're gonna vote in.
Right, and they would probably consider that their home.
But it doesn't clarify how often you have to sleep in that
No, it
particular
does
home
not.
to have it declared as your residence.
No,
your
once again, it
primary
goes back to
residency.
which one do you consider your home?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Delasola.
This seems like a long process once you pick a person who you think does not live in that residence. Now, you're saying you have to, correct me if I'm wrong, have the results before the signatures are approved, correct?
Yes. You have to know from, yes, there's so many days after the signatures are approved. Now you know the person's on the ballot, and I'm sorry, I don't recall the exact date, but there are so many days that you can challenge somebody's, you're actually challenging them as a registered voter at that address, is what you're really doing. You're challenging their right to be a registered voter at whatever street, or the city of Everett as a whole, if you feel they don't live in the community.
And how long do you think, let's say,
Oh, no, there's a timetable there with, within so many days, the Election Commission will have to hold a hearing and determine it.
So by the time someone picks the neighborhood they think does not live in this resident, from the time he starts his investigation to the election committee, all that, it sounds like it's gonna go. It's a long
Unfortunately, the
process.
time will probably no more than, I would say 14 days, which doesn't give much time for an investigation.
Right.
Doesn't give much more time than that.
That's why, as a suggestion, we kick it to the commission to work on it. Might not be for these electoral
Right.
elections coming up, but for the future.
This may do is, if someone's thinking of it, say it's not worth it to them.
That's right.
They're gonna finally be investigated, not just, yeah, we heard that, but let him run. Now they're saying, I can get caught, this is
You
big,
can get caught up on the pains
time
and
stuff.
penalties.
One
of perjury.
suggestion I would have is that the form on the back of the nomination paper, I'd like to turn that into more signature spaces and make them sign a separate affidavit. I think that gives a little more credence to it, because face it, how many times have you filled out that back without really reading it?
makes
Oh, I
sense.
put my name and my address.
Yeah.
And make them fill out a separate one, so they realize in their head, I'm swearing that I live where I say I live.
No,
I think that's clearer.
yeah.
On the backside of your nomination paper, I think it's become just another form to
routine.
fill out.
Right.
Mr. Clerk, on that, I mean, these are all great ideas in the sense of moving this along. What would the recommendation be?
Yeah, I'd
Send this
refer it to the Election Commission, and like I said, one recommendation I would make to them is to make it a separate form so that they realize that they're signing an affidavit saying,
We're going to
"I
invite you
don't
to
live
that
there."
meeting.
Absolutely.
So that you could come as well as the
Absolutely.
assistant. He's always there anyway, so. The motion is to, is there any other questions? Brian? Excuse me, sorry, thanks. Thank you very much for appearing tonight, Mr. Clerk. And the motion should be to send this to the commission, Elections Commission, and to invite City Clerk Matarazzo and also the sponsors, as well as this board here, to that, to actually to take part in that, and, the commission. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so.
Mr. Chairman, can we suspend the rules and take item number 4 off of the calendar, please?
Item number 4, yes. Motion made and seconded to take item number 4 off the calendar. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so.
All right, item number 4. This is a resolution by Council John Leo McKinnon, First Baptist Church representative appeared to relative to parking and traffic.
Could we have the city engineer before us and the Cardillos before us, please?
Thank you, Freddie.
Who's the next to me?
If you could state your names and titles, please.
Julius Ofori, city engineer, engineering.
Thank you.
Paul Cardillo, First Baptist Church.
Irene Cadello, First Baptist Church.
Thank you for appearing again. This is one of the pieces that we're trying to move forward. Hopefully we can. There was to the engineer, there was a company that was hired to actually take a look at this as a consulting firm. Do we have anything back from them?
Yeah, I actually, the drawing in front of you, it's what was proposed by the traffic engineers,
This is from the consulting firm?
from the consultants, yes.
Okay.
You know.
Now, on this, you have, I want your, actually, if everybody's taking a look at this,
Right.
I just want to get an opinion on, your opinion as a new engineer. We were working under an old engineer at the time. We had to put in a consultant group, and now we have a new engineer, so he's been with the city for many, many years. I've known this man, and I appreciate his thoughts on this.
In looking into the situation we have right now, the island actually before was very small, was smaller than this, you know. I took the initiative to expand it, you know, to what it is right now. And looking into all that has been coming up to the council, I have not actually seen any accident within the area. The way the traffic pattern was before, I would think that it's the best for the area. One thing we should put into consideration is we have to listen to the residents and be able to come into some kind of agreement, you know. The city took the initiative to make the changes that you see out there right now. And in my opinion, or in my, I don't think it's that feasible. If we let it go the way it used to go, and either we have a bump out on Linden, maybe we might be able to slow the traffic, and also, you know, put it back the way it should be. The design we have in front of us here, it's showing a different traffic pattern, and it's a good design, but I don't think it's the way we want to go.
So, Mr. Engineer, on this, I would think that if we come up Church Street one way coming from Broadway and continue it all the way up from Broadway, we can probably assume that we can make that a one-way and people wouldn't be coming down and making a dangerous situation that it's turned into now?
If you make Webster, if you turn it the
Webster
other-
has to be all the way one way as well,
yeah,
correct?
if you make Webster one way, that means you're coming all the way from Broadway.
It's already
No.
a one-way, halfway, so it might as well go the whole way.
No, you see, initially before, Webster was two ways.
Yeah,
Then we turn it, we change the direction to a one way, which is heading towards Broadway.
sure.
If you change that direction again, say for example you change the direction from Broadway to Linden and put a stop, do not enter. So that means you're taking two directions, right, going to Linden. That would work, but it might not please everyone. But if you go back the same old ways,
So the old way was Church Street all the way up?
Church
to
Street
Linden.
all the way up.
Okay.
So also
And then Webster all the way down?
All
to
the way
Broadway.
down.
Okay.
What we can do is you can do markings on the ground. The markings on the ground might help.
What about?
When I say marking, is that it's like doing a marking whereby you pattern it in a way that it goes all the way to Linden. It's on the ground. You're not building any structure there. That's one way to go. But my opinion, what you have right now is I don't think it's feasible because we've already spent money on this project.
This isn't, I don't think this is the answer, I'll be honest with you. With the money that we spent, this doesn't look like the answer. This would make it worse, I would believe. So, I would think, that you're there, I will hold them questions for you. So, just seeing what they wanted to do, it seems kind of, they're isolating off, the church, actually, from doing so, but they're extending out the
bumper.
Yeah, and they're also putting another island on the other end of it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we want to a direct flow of traffic going one way, I would think, up Church, and then another down Webster, both in one way.
Yeah, I spoke to Jay, who's a transportation planner.
Yeah.
The one thing we can do here is, we can change the area between Linden and Webster by either doing some kind of raised crosswalk that might slow traffic down. We can place some signage that might be able to educate people, what direction to go. But if you start putting bumpers and the direction we're going right now by taking a left turn from the island, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, we don't
That's
wanna
my
do that.
opinion.
You want to make that one way all the way, correct?
I would think so.
And then one way from Church all the way up.
I would think so.
And with that turnaround still being able to take that right,
The turnaround would be still able to take right. That's the way it used to be. But the
Okay.
turnaround would not go left.
you can't go left
No.
to Linden. You have to turn around going one way direction down
Yes.
towards City Hall again. Okay. And then you can come back around, loop around, and go up Church, and then go to Linden.
That's right.
All right. Does that sound fair enough? That we would look at it something like that?
I mean, it's fair enough. I would think that, we can readdress the whole area either by mailing the street and put a lot of markings and signage and, call it a day.
And that we could possibly do a raised crosswalk there at that island.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you
before
can-
the church, so that they understand, that's a one-way, you're going either that way or you're going up this way, and you're not gonna be coming down this street.
Yeah, yes, we can do
To
that.
make
yeah.
head-on collisions and stuff, that's what
Well,
we're
you
trying to
see,
do.
the problem with Linden Street is that it's highly traveled and it's a speedy area.
Yeah.
So if you do anything like raised, crosswalks there, I think that we need to address that angle there between Linden and Webster. That would slow the whole project down,
Okay.
and that would help.
Councilors have questions, so I'll yield. Actually, it was Councilor Capone, then McLaughlin, then Delasola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the city engineer. I don't think anyone's in love with this. One thing, from the church's perspective, I don't want to put words in their mouth, they can speak for themselves afterwards, but I think one of the main concerns were they were having a difficult time funerals and weddings, and this would make it even worse with the bump out in the different areas. But I've been convinced, and I know a lot of my colleagues have been convinced for the longest time, that all we needed to do was extend out the island towards Linden to make a clear delineation between whether or not you're going on Webster Street or Church Street. And two-way traffic on Webster is absolutely nightmare. So, and it sounds like you were thinking along those lines as well. And I think you mentioned you were looking at accidents, and there really weren't any tremendous amount of accidents. So somehow, some way, somewhere, somebody thought this was a good idea to change. So they've taken something that really wasn't broken, try to fix with a whole new design. So, I'd be inclined to agree that I think one-way Church going from Broadway to Linden, one-way going from Linden up Webster to Broadway, keep that swing with a right turn only, so you go from Church to Webster with a right turn only, but do something with that island to extend it out so it's very clear and it's safe. It's a safe layout.
Right.
So if you're coming on Linden, you are very clear that you cannot take a right on the Church, that you've got to go to Webster. And I think if we do that, I think it satisfies everybody's concerns, and we get to where we want to be.
Yes.
So, okay, good. All right. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Just one comment. The only thing on this, if we were to do that, we would actually extend out the island, correct? To make it, to make it a barrier for Webster and Church?
Yeah, if you extend that island, in terms of the way the cars are coming, I would think you can do it with markings,
With
several,
the tall pole market?
Yeah, even you can do, you can you can do a pattern in the ground with concrete. It's like when you go on the breakdown lane.
Yes.
Things like that would work. I mean, you can see areas like this in Boston.
Yeah.
If you take this island all the way to Linden, then you're creating more issues.
Sure.
The island was originally very
So
small.
we might be able to put up almost like a temporary permanent barrier for that?
Yeah, I guess we can address it.
Okay.
It should be able to be addressed.
Councilman McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to be very truthful with you, this is incompetency at its best. This is incompetency. The fact that we spent $10,000, my nephew's second grade class at Benelin English School could have drew a better picture than this, to be very truthful with you. We spent $10,000 to find out nothing. We have a traffic study that works in planning development that has never come up here to talk to us about this project. We have a 10 by 10 square and we can't figure out how to move cars in a circle. If we can't figure this out, right, we have a big issue here in the city of Everett. And Julius, no disrespect to you, you're new to this project. You were the assistant under a very incompetent individual that was here previously to you. I'm disgusted that I'm seeing this tonight, to be very truthful. I can't believe that we still, after study, are back at square one because we don't have a plan that works right now. So we spent $10,000, it's option 6, so there's 5 other options out there. And they felt as though this was the best option to put forward before us. And it still doesn't work. At what point do we kind of say that it's insulting, to be truthful with you? And it's not to you, Julius, because you weren't the engineer at this time. But the fact that we're still have no better plan right now than we do. The 4 of us could have sat up here, drew this design, and saved the city of Everett $10,000 than what we just did in the last 6 months.
We just did, Mike.
Absolutely, and we just did it, exactly, Mr. Chairman. So this is truly incompetency at its best. Incompetency of people here in City Hall and outside consultants. I am insulted by this, and I think it's useless. Where do we go from tonight? And I think, Mr. Chairman, you just hit the nail on the head. We just did it. We just figured out the plan that should have been put before us months ago, that we didn't have to spend $10,000. I hope that we're not going to spend one more dollar on this, because it's not worth what's the $10,000 that we've already spent on this.
Councilman Della Sola.
Councilman McLaughlin is exactly right. This is more dangerous than what we had there for 100 years. My suggestion is the crosswalk where you come from Linden onto Webster, like Julius was saying, the raised crosswalk could be there. Because people that come down here, 80% of the ones that come at the City Hall or the residents, they'll get used to it. That raised crosswalk, I think, coming right across, you can see in the map here, the residents can't see this, but that crosswalk, I think, would be a raised crosswalk, would slow everybody down, because you come up Linden, you bear right onto Webster. There's no stopping. It's just a continuous flow. I think that will slow them down. In about a month after that's put in, they'll realize that's there and slow everything down. Other than that, everything else, if I had an eraser, I'd erase this whole page. White out or something. It's just, again, it's crazy. But
So-
my question to the Cadillos with the church, since this has the most impact on you, if you don't mind me asking them,
No, that's fine.
if we erase everything that we have here, had it going straight with the raised crosswalk, is that gonna solve the issues that we have up there?
So Church would be one way from Broadway to Linden, correct?
Yes.
What I'll give it to you, what we
So going up
discussed.
Church, you're gonna
So
bear
Chur-
right onto Webster, no more
Church-
left.
Church would be one way all the way through to Linden, but also have the right turn to go on to
Correct.
Webster.
To go to City Hall.
right,
So-
to City Hall,
Yes.
not go left.
Correct. So
And that Webster would be the one way coming from Linden all the way down to Broadway.
right, and there wouldn't be those big bumps in at that big green thing that they.
No, that's
Right?
gone.
No.
That's never
And
gonna
there
be
wouldn't
there.
one near the
No,
top.
this is all,
That's all gone.
this is all
You
gone.
might just get this. in.
The only thing that would probably happen is this island would extend out a little bit further with temporary. And then after that, we would modify that as needed, according to Julius, or Franny, the city engineer. But, one way from Webster down to Broadway, one way from Church up with the turnaround.
Correct.
That's it.
And if we had
I
the
mean,
rumble
and with the
strip,
raised crosswalk, crosswalk at Linden.
if we had the
and
raised
Webster.
crosswalk
Yeah,
in
with
the
the-
rumble strip coming from, instead of, my opinion, instead of building an extended island, if you have the rumble strip come from the island towards Linden,
Right.
if it's only, say, 8 or 9 feet,
Yeah, just so when they're turning
with the markers that
Absolutely.
are bolted into the ground,
Right.
and I think your problem solved after, gee.
Councilman,
Then we
Delasola?
address Linden Street.
On that, the other two that you see on Linden, right? These two, would those be raised crosswalks too as
Yeah,
well?
you know, I would, from my own opinion, I would think you can take Linden Street, including Webster, do the whole thing, raise the whole thing a lot, you know.
The whole
and make-
intersection be
Right,
raised.
and slow the traffic down
Sure.
on Linden.
The only thing on that, you know yourself,
Driveway.
if there's any manholes in that intersection, now
Right.
you get into,
There's
it's
none.
been, well, I guess there's not, no raised castings?
No.
I mean, put the
Um,
10,000 there, you know what I mean? It might not even be 10,000.
Ah.
So-
I think, and then, you know, I'll give my 2 cents after, but, are you done?
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cadell, you had something before I
Just
allow
a-
Councilman McLaughlin?
Just a statement, see this design that they came up with? In 2015, when I started going to City Hall, when they decided to make that change, this is the design that Jay Monty and Mr. O'Rourke showed me. This is the plan, although they just, one little difference, they wanted to put all cement in front of the church.
That's horrible.
And I kept saying, why would you do that to me? Because then my hearses would be on Webster Street, you know, comical. This is the original design that he wanted to push. And when that company that you paid $10,000 for came to the church for 2 hours, this is the design that they pushed. So somehow they got influenced by somebody, and it just seems silly. $10,000 could have bought a lot of food for the pantry. Had to say it, sorry.
It's okay. Councilman McLaughlin?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I am honestly baffled, to be truthful. My question is,
Yeah, give me the question.
my question is, it says option number 6. Julius, do we have a record that shows the 5 other options, or how many options were total? Because this is option number 6 that we're seeing. Do we have the other options that were on the table that somebody
No,
decided to go away from?
I requested for the other options. I was only given option 6. From my understanding was, this was actually the only design. It was more or less like a
So this is
discussion.
option 6 because
Yeah.
they put an arrow to the left and the right versus put an arrow opposite. So
Yeah,
they
the
just took this design, changed a few arrows here and there, and kept calling it option 1 through 6.
Yeah.
But it's the same exact design though, from where we started, $10,000 more.
I would think so, because for them to go further up, you know, they came before us to extend the contract, and I just told the
Extend what contract?
their contract.
We're gonna spend more money on this?
But no, I've put
Oh,
I put a halt on it. Yeah, I put a halt.
Thank you for putting a
Yeah.
halt. Finally, somebody is thinking. Thank you for putting a halt on not extending a contract to do what we just did, 10 minutes.
You still want it? Okay.
So we don't have option 1 through 6, Mr. Chairman, is what I'm getting at.
We ha-
There is no other option. They just called this option 6.
We have option 6, and we just took option 1 through 6, and we made our own option 7 to put it back the way it used to be, I guess. So,
Okay. I'm going to make a motion after this.
I'd hold that thought. Councilman Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the engineer. Have we gone through the full 10,000 at this point, or is there any left over?
We've, you know, I wasn't involved in the budget, but I was requested last week to do a change order, which is more money for like $4,000, and I basically told Jay I'm going to put a halt on it today.
Good, good. I feel the same exact way. I know we're all on the same page. I'm disheartened to hear this is a similar plan that was looked at years ago. And I know within some of those other options, 1 to 5, one of them was the one that I mentioned, I think we're all on board with, which is going back to where we first started.
Church Street, one way,
Yeah,
Webster
there was,
Street, one way.
there really was
raise
no
the
reason
curbs.
to change it because there wasn't a history of accidents. So there was no reason to change it in the first place. So I'm glad you halted it. We're all on the same page. And So I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Is there any other questions out there, councilors?
Yes.
Councilman McLaughlin. Make them civil too, please.
I really am trying to, but I'm really having a hard time to keep my composure here because I can't really believe that this is actually coming before me, and this isn't a dream, to be truthful. Julius, I applaud you for not spending another $4,000 on this, to be truthful with you. Kudos to you. And maybe somebody can inform me, because I'm not sure that I was here. Where did this actually resonate from? How did we even get to this point? We're spending $10,000 on a study.
Will you yield?
My pleasure.
Okay. Councilman Capone.
Okay. My understanding of the history, Mr. Chairman, please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, one day, for whatever reason, it was decided to change the flow of traffic down there. It was news to all of us. It just got changed.
Actually, and I'll give it to you, I was the one that put the piece on.
Way back.
When?
Years.
Under the guidance of the Cadillos, I took notes from them, asked them what it was about. They sent me a letter. I put it on the calendar. We voted to put this into committee. It's been battled back and forth in this committee, beat to death for a long period of time. Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah, this was prior. This was prior to this
This has been
term.
going on for a long time, and
Yeah.
that's how it originated, because I put the piece on the calendar. But.
So,
and-
it was actually
this
even
is-
before then.
This is longer than, I can say it, our clerk, when he was a councilman on Liberty Street.
Yeah.
This was going on. So it's been going on for a number of years, many of times, many of councilmen. But this right here, I think the simple kind of,
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to see if I can apply for a job there tomorrow. I'm not an engineer, but I can make a circle work.
Oh, Mike, I think you can do anything.
but what was I going to say is, I think what we did was we came up with sort of a solution to the problem. We'll make a motion not to fund an additional $4,000 for anything on this. Also, we'll make the motion to,
I'm going to make a motion that I would like to have the mayor himself. I want the mayor. The mayor is the head honcho here in the city of Everett. I want him to come up here to talk to us about this project. I want him to answer some questions.
just,
I want to know who,
what I'd like, Council.
I'm going to make that as a motion, Mr. Chairman. You don't have to support it. It's okay.
That's fine.
But I'm going to make it as a motion that I want the mayor here to talk about this project, because this, at this point, is out of control.
That's
Yeah, but-
fine, as long as we can get the end result, right? And we can get it done for these people that are on Church and Webster, they're going back and forth seeing what's going on here. I mean, it's tragic, but it needs to be fixed. That's the end result, right there, is that we fix this. You know what I'm saying? So,
Councilman, in reference to what my council friend just said, I don't think the mayor has. I don't think the mayor was in favor of changing any pattern, because the mayor felt that since it's becoming more controversial,
yeah.
that we should
I'll be
go
honest
back
with
to
you.
where we started from. you know.
In talks with him on this, he said, you know, basically, if we gotta extend the island, we'll extend the island.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Basically, he's looking, what he was doing was he was trying to, probably through his city engineer, get a professional opinion, which it should have already came from the city engineer, because it's coming from this city engineer right now. When he did that, he was gonna go with whatever they came up with. So I don't think it's so much the mayor, I think it's more or less what we had in this company here, design, and then more or less in the old city engineer that was going along with the design of this. So, to be
Do
quite
we know that
honest.
Mr. J. Monty from Community Development, who's our traffic engineer, has he been involved in this at all? Is he, and that's sort of the questions that I want to ask, that I'd like to get answers from the mayor, is, has our traffic engineer looked at this? Has he been involved in any of the conversation,
What
discussion?
we're gonna do with this piece, and what I'd like to do with it, under the guidance here, is we're gonna get it out of this committee, because it's been held over in this committee almost a year.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
something. We need to move this forward.
I agree with you,
So
Mr. Chairman.
what it is, we're getting a game plan here now through our new city engineer, which seems feasible to the residents and the community leaders down there at the church site anyway. And probably the residents as a whole, so they don't have to continuously, look at this sign, what do we do this week? What do we go this week? Should we have a bump here, or what are we gonna do? We're gonna destroy our cars there, or, you know, it's been pretty hectic, for a year now on this piece, and I submitted this, I think, what, July, maybe? It was way before July, so that's when I submitted the first original piece. We have to come up with a report that goes back to the council. At the council, we can allow questioning, yeah, if you would like, but,
No,
I think,
and I
what we need to
apologize-
do
and I
is.
apologize. I
No,
agree with
that's
you, Mr.
fine.
Chairman.
No, I'm just clarifying. What we need to do now as this body is to get this out with a favorable recommendation of what we think is gonna be going down with the city engineer and moving forward, so they can move forward, to better it for them. That was our only goal, was to actually better it for, you know, the church and surrounding area, you know, the people of the surrounding area. So that's what we're looking at doing now. If you want to ask questions and bring Jay Marty forward, the mayor, whoever you'd like, that's fine. But at that point, I mean, I gave you what I knew of what the mayor had said to probably Julius Afrani,
Yes.
myself. I know he's probably had a couple of meetings with a couple of different people, but on this, he was willing to extend the island out and say, well, why don't we just do it like what we're trying to do now? So, that's what I'm trying to say. I think this is probably the way to go. And getting it from a long committee member and a colleague of ours that lived on Liberty Street, this has been going on for years.
Yep.
So what we need to do is put a fix to it.
So can we put that in a form of a motion, though?
Can put it-
And I'll ask our clerk committees, can we put it in a form of motion or some sort of report that we want X, Y, and Z? We want Webster to go, Broadway to,
This
excuse me,
is the
Church to
motion.
go from
We're gonna correct this tonight. We're
Okay, so
correcting it
that's,
tonight.
so that's what we're gonna come out with is,
Yes.
okay, thank you,
We're
gentlemen.
not leaving here tonight without getting this corrected, because it's getting off this calendar. Councilman Capone.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, and unless there's any other questions, I would say excuse the customary thanks, but I thank everyone for being here. The recommendation I would make
Excuse the
is,
customary thanks. Thank you for appearing tonight. Stay in the chair, because I may have another couple of questions. Sure. But
I would say that we recommend to the body, general idea of what we're looking at, and with a request that the city engineer just sketch out exactly what he's talking about, and consistent with what we were talking about, so we have something to look at. I honestly don't think we should waste any more effort trying to figure out how we got here, or get
yeah.
answers, because that's a waste of time.
We need to
All I
just
want to
do
do
it.
is move forward and get this done. I mean, I think we all know how we got here. So let's just move forward and get this project done
Absolutely.
for everyone's benefit. So that would be the motion that I
All
would
right,
make.
that's the motion. The Cadillos. I have one question from the chair. Would you be satisfied with something like that, because you have been the prominent body coming from the church and the citizens, basically, on this? So if we were to do Church Street one way, and with that option to turn to the right to come back to City Hall, with Webster a one-way, with the raised crosswalks here to slow down the traffic flow off of Linden, would you be agreeable to that?
I think that's perfect, thank you.
I
You think it's perfect?
Okay, and Julius, for any city engineer, you'll put that in
Do
the
a sketch
form?
on it, yes.
Basically, we want Church Street up, signage on that, going all the way up. Webster Street down, signage on it all the way down.
Right.
From Linden and from Broadway Church up, from Linden and Webster down. And basically, that turn is still there, available to people coming, to go to the right, that's it. And the the raised
Crosswalk.
crosswalks.
Right.
Okay.
The old-
On those three essentially.
Yeah, that I'll work with Jay.
Okay.
We'll put that in a form of motion and favorable
Yeah,
action.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it right now. I'm trying to think of it first. All right. Excuse the customary thanks. Thank you very much for appearing tonight. I'm glad to see that this may get reported back out to the council as a whole. So the motion would be to report this back to the council as a whole, have Julius Fernie, the city engineer, draft up Church Street one-way all the way up to Linden, from Broadway to Linden, with the right turn extended to still be there to go one-way, going back to Broadway on Webster. Have Webster from Linden on Webster to Broadway, one-way. So Church is one-way to Linden from Broadway. Webster's one-way to Broadway. That turn is still there so that people can still, off of Church, still go to the right. Three raised crosswalks, 2 on Linden, 1 on Webster.
And extend out from the island to
And
Linden,
extend the,
as he recommended.
the extension of the island with temporary or whatever you choose. Can we get the sketch by the 13th on that?
Sure.
Okay, very good. So,
That's in the form of
so
motion.
moved.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, you have done so. Thank you for appearing. This is going to be
you.
reported back on the 13th.
We'll be missing you. We won't have any more committee meetings after this.
You'll see us, don't worry, we'll be coming to the church and helping out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to suspend Rule 17 and take item number 2 off the calendar, waive the rule, read and refer it back to sponsor as.
Motion made,
Ben.
suspend Rule 17. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 2, come from the calendar.
Waive the read and refer back to sponsor as the item
We
has
have to
been
read
resolved.
everything. We have to read it all, and then,
People know what you heard.
yeah, we got to read it.
Item number 2 is a resolution up by Council Mike McLaughlin to discuss the host community agreement between Wind Boston Harbor and the city of Everett. This discussion already took place.
This was a discussion that took place prior year, so we're going to move this off the calendar. Motion to refer back?
So moved.
All right. Motion made and seconded to refer back to sponsor. All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it.
Can we make a motion to take item number 1?
Motion made to take item number 1 from the calendar. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so.
Item number 1, this is a resolution up by Council Michael McLaughlin to invite the chief of police for an update regarding steps being taken before the opening of the Wind Boston Harbor.
Councilman McLaughlin.
Mr. Chairman, some things really make me baffled. This is one of them. We have 90-plus men and women of the Everett Police Department, and we can't get anybody to appear before public safety to talk about an item that I take very serious, an item that needs to be worked on today to prepare ourselves for the future. We have serious issues across this city right now. Some people may or may not want to talk about them. We have serious issues across the city right now with the manpower that we have. We're going to bring in a $2+ billion development to the city, 2 major residential complex developments on Revere Beach Parkway. We're going to bring in a host of other businesses, and we don't have anybody out of a 90+ manpower department or administration to come and talk to us about how we're putting plans in place to implement getting members on the streets. A year ago, we were told that there was this wonderful plan that we were going to get 10 police officers a year onto the streets prior to opening of Wind Boston Harbor.
That's item number 3, but we'll go ahead.
Okay? So the plan that I see is that we've had 2 lateral transfers come into the city of Everett in the past year that I've been on the city council. If somebody knows something different, be my guest to share. But the fact that nobody is here tonight to talk about this matter is very disheartening, frustrated, and to be frank, disgusting that we
Counsel,
can't
what-
get somebody here.
Just for a point of maybe clarity here, I asked when I was talking to number 3, question number 3, when I asked about question number 3, I also asked about question number 1, the hiring practice and how it's going to be maintained. It's actually starting to get in place to be on schedule for the 10 a year. That's what was told to me by the Human Resources Director. That's why I wanted to put it out there now. But he wasn't able to come tonight, reason being as he had a prior engagement or something to that effect. But he did give me things for number 3, but he mentioned that as well for number 2. Number 1, sorry.
No, and I understand that the personnel director or human resource director is one individual. He may have other commitment.
He's
But-
on our side. He wants.
Correct.
He wants.
But we have a
more.
police
I
department
know.
that
He
could
wants
send a
more
representative.
cops. I know that. That's what he told me tonight when I went down to see him earlier. So I know.
Do we know, Mr. Chairman, how many police officers are in the academy right now? Because it takes about a
Vetting.
9-month circle
Absolutely.
to
It's
get them
called-
through the system and actually get them out onto the streets.
Yep, council, it's called vetting.
Okay.
And they're in the process of vetting right now. I know they said, I think he said 8 right now. So, with that, he said he's in line to do more. So, if
But
that
he's really
means
not,
anything
Mr.
to-
Chairman, if you look at this, because on
it
3/24/2016, he told us that he was gonna have 10 in the current, in the coming
But it
calendar
takes,
year.
you're right, you're correct on what you stated earlier, was the 9 months. It does take to vet.
Yep, so are you telling me that we're going to see 10 new police officers come out in sometime in March of this year? Because that would be 1 year since we had this piece before us originally, when he told us we were gonna have 10 per year.
No, I agree.
So
I agree.
we should-
I agree.
So technically, by March, we should have 10 new police officers standing before us to be sworn in. The fact of the matter is, it's not going to happen.
I know, from what I've heard, from the lack of, them showing up tonight, is that they are in the process of vetting. I know that they were, because I know one of the candidates that they're actually were sitting at the house talking to them about. So I know they're in the process of vetting. I know it's top on their priority, and I think it takes a little bit of time for them to do it, but they are in the process of doing it. I don't know how many exactly that they're doing.
So explain to me, Mr. Chairman, because you may know, or another colleague may, and I'll yield the floor to anybody, but
Yeah.
the first step is the vetting process. They identify the candidates that they're going to put forward to put into the academy. Is that correct? That's
Well,
the
it's
vetting
the
process?
civil service testing, that's how it goes.
Well, the civil service,
And then after
vetting.
that, it goes into their selection process and vetting process.
So if they're at the vetting stage right now, they're still 9 months away from being able to get new members on the police, onto the streets.
They would have to go through action after the vetting process, and I'm not there's a few things that have to go on before that, but there's a number of testing that they have to do as well. So
But that's all
that-
part of the 9-month
Yeah.
period, correct?
Yes, that's like physical, that's.
So then realistically, it has taken us
mental,
2
that's-
years at that point to
No.
get, yes, because we started this last March, on March 24th, we were told we were gonna have 10 new police officers on the streets. There will be 2 years before we get 10 new police officers on the streets.
There's a group starting the academy in March. from
And
what
that's
I-
gonna take another 9 months to be able to get through and get onto the
They have to go
streets.
through they have to.
That's
go
actually
through
the first
academy.
academy we've ever had going forward. So it's taken 2 years to get one academy set up with X amount of members, and to get X amount of police officers, presumably 10, onto the streets. It will have taken us 2 years to do that. We only had a 3-year window to be able to build the Win Boston Harbor.
How many were we supposed to have?
10 per year. So
How many,
we've taken
how
it-
many total were we supposed to have by that date?
Well, if it's 10 by times 3 is 30 officers on the streets. If it's taken us 2 years to get 8 to 10 officers at the end when this is all said and done, we're going to have 8 to 10 new officers on the
There was-
streets
there-
before,
There was concern with this prior.
correct,
I know that.
a year
There wa-
ago.
There was, I know there was, because I was here with you.
Right.
There was,
And we've
there
all,
was very
and-
much concern about that. And I know that all the colleagues here would actually echo those statements.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, from what I got tonight from the Human Resources Director, he feels comfortable that we should be able to get the 10 per year by the time that opens.
but that doesn't mean that we're gonna have 10 on the, we're not gonna have 10 per year by the time it opens, because we're gonna be minus 10, the first 10 we're
It
gonna be
depends on
minus.
how you gotta,
Well, the only way
vetting and
the only
all
way
that.
we would do that, Mr. Chairman, is if we put 20 members into the police academy in March of this year. Then we would have made up for 10 of last year and 10 of the coming year. Then we
Plus
would
you
have the 10 per year.
Plus you've
that-
hired through attrition as well, so.
We've
you're
hired several
replacing-
laterals, right?
You're replacing what you're losing. So, the numbers, we need the definite numbers before we can actually make
Yeah, because
pretty
it's
much
not, it's,
comment on it.
'cause it's not
And
adding
then,
up.
and that's why they should be here tonight, but I'm assuming they're gonna be definitely here next time that we request them to come. Because this right here is this has been on the calendar just as long as the other one. It's been-
Since March 24th of 2016, it's been
And
here.
you put it on the calendar, correct?
March 24th of
Okay.
2016.
So what I'm saying is, if this has been going on since March of 16, and we still don't have an answer, a definitive answer right now, and tonight was the night we were gonna kick it off the calendar.
Correct.
To start new business in this year, we need to get a definitive answer on numbers, a definitive answer on vetting, a definitive answer on who's coming in March. A definitive answer is how many offices are gonna be put into play by the opening date, which I agree. I think that we should have those numbers. And we should be looking into doing a little bit more with that. So, whatever you wanna do with this, council.
You know, Mr. Chairman, this is extremely frustrating, extremely concerning because of what we have seen most recently across the city. And the fact that we're going to have an influxation of new business and residents into the city of Everett. I'm not really sure where we turn at this point. If we've taken a year to not get any answers, do we keep this on the calendar and keep
We're
batting
gonna-
our heads off
no.
the wall, or do we?
No, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep this in our committee right here. We're gonna invite these individuals back. Was there recently a change in the union reps as well down there?
There was. I believe it's,
What-
I'm not sure how often, but I know in January there was a change in union representative.
Okay, so that may explain why the union reps were not here. Maybe they didn't know about it, maybe they should be informed about it to come here and actually represent their body. We probably need to extend.
But I can assure you that the chief of police probably knew
Oh, he-
about it.
Yeah, he knows. So there's no, I don't know why they're not here tonight, I'll be honest with you. So what we need to do is we need to do this. We need to re-invite these individuals, bring them back before the next committee meeting to ensure that we have what you want answered. So that means the vetting process, how long it takes, how many people are being vetted from this point till now, March, how many people are gonna be entering the academy, how many people are actually, gonna be going through the academy, and then, have the union representatives, both the Superior and the patrolman's offices, come here before us too, to basically, and actually invite human resources as well, because he's thinking that right now it's starting to get in line for what they're trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask you this question. My colleagues can answer it as well. Do we send this out to the full body so that this happens in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks from now? And we don't wait another month, because at this point it's going to be sometime in February.
This will go right to the next committee.
This goes right to the next committee meeting, so. We have to recommend something from this committee to
You're
the
gonna
full
keep
body.
this in committee, and we're gonna
So we can
re-invite
recommend.
to the next committee.
Okay, and again, I apologize, that's my inexperience in not knowing the process, so that's why I yield the floor to anybody to give me advice on. So then,
What would
so
you like to
moved.
do with it? I mean, I understand it's frustrating that no one's here, and it's not plausible
Yeah, I'm
for
gonna,
the
I'm
committee
gonna
to
make a
move forward.
motion, as you just did, Mr. Chairman, that we're gonna re-invite all of the individuals that were listed on tonight's agenda, including the mayor, if he wasn't invited, because the mayor was invited also. So you know what's really frustrating about that, right, Mr. Chairman, is that the administration decides to hold a community meeting tonight down at the Cavarian School about a park project, that they decide that they're going to attend tonight. But let's skip talking about how to beef up our police force so that we get ready for a $2 billion project that's coming into the city. Let's go hold a neighborhood meeting and talk about a park renovation, which will occur at some point, but I'm sure it wasn't the most important thing to do tonight, and to avoid coming to this meeting tonight. So I'm going to ask that we invite all of them, and to be truthful, with a demand that they show up next time.
Yeah, we're gonna invite Human Resources as well to come and speak on it. No, he's not. He was on number 3. It was a separate issue, but he wanted to let me know that, because I asked him just because I read the whole calendar, and I wanted to make sure that we had some type of answers if in fact they weren't gonna be here tonight. to actually go over some of the answers with you, so. But, Councilman Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, to amend the motion with those invites so that they understand specifically what we're looking for.
Sure.
Where are we at now? We know that the chief was here and addressed this at one point in time. We were
This
talking
will go
about
into,
10 individuals, but.
This will
what-
go into the invite?
Yeah.
All right.
When we invite them, I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're following up the prior conversation that we had, talking about how many police officers we were looking to add each year up to the opening, and where we're at now, how many have gone through the academy, how many in the academy, who's waiting to go into the, exactly, the whole process. That's what we're looking for. That's the
Looking
information we
for,
want.
we're looking for the whole process. All right, motion is to keep this in the committee and to re-invite the mayor, police chief, patrolmen's union representative, and representative of the Superior Union down there. Also, Wynn Boston Harbor, and
I
he'll-
actually
don't need Win
I don't think we need to have Win Boston
Okay.
Harbor here. I don't
We'll
think that they're.
skip Wynn Boston Harbor, we'll invite
Human
Human
Resources,
Resources
yeah.
instead, and with on the invite, so that they have an understanding of what we're looking for, is a follow-up to how many officers are going to be hired in the near future and going forward to the Wynn project, how many officers are going to be vetted, how many officers are going to be involved going into the March Academy, as well as follow-up from there, and their plan on how to actually establish the numbers that they had set forward in the prior year.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask for one other question. I'm sorry, Council Capone, go ahead.
Councilman Capone?
And what has happened since that
And-
first date?
And that addition.
Where are we at now?
Where we're standing right now with this. Councilman McLaughlin?
And I'm going to also ask that the city clerk give a ruling to me. I know in the previous charter, if we wanted to have a department head before us and they refused to show up for whatever reason, we could take authorization to force them to show up. Do we still have those powers in front of us? And if they are, can he tell me what chapter and section it's under so that I can read it, so that we can enforce it if they choose not to show up to talk about this?
Councilman Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would say to address that is any individual that we request up is supposed to come up. If we're going to ask a question, the only variable is we've got to give them 7 days' notice of the exact questions we want.
Absolutely.
But every single individual that we request, including the mayor, in the charter it says if the mayor is requested to appear personally, he's supposed to appear personally. He's not supposed to send staff member. He's supposed to appear personally. Every department head, anyone who we ask to appear before us who works for the city, as long as we let them know what we're looking for, they're required to be here. And if they don't, then you go from there. But that's basically the process. It's a matter of courtesy, it's a matter of respect, it's a matter of respect that has to go back and forth between all the branches and between all the employees. And that's all we're looking to do. We're trying to do our job, and that's the only way we can do it.
Thank you,
On-
Mr.
on that,
Council
I know
Capone, on
I-
that.
I think I'd like to clarify this. We received a communication from John Taco indicating that they couldn't be here because they were also invited, but we really didn't need them. They sent back, and I'm looking at it, they CC everybody indicating that they couldn't make it, asking us if we could reschedule for another meeting for their presence. We told them that we didn't need them, but I think since everybody else got a copy that they couldn't be here, asking that they reschedule the meeting, I think the other invitees might have taken it upon themselves to think that they were also met.
Mr. Burley, Mr. Clerk Committees, I appreciate your ruling, but if our department heads think for 1 minute that a representative of Wynn Boston Harbor has a right to cancel our meeting or to not have an item appear before our calendar, these gentlemen and ladies have been in the city for a long time. They know how things are done in the city. If they for 1 second thought that John Taco or anybody from Wynn Boston Harbor could cancel our meeting single-handedly without getting a communication from somebody in these chambers or in our administrative office, come on, give me a break, please.
Counselor?
I'm just saying, that's.
Yeah, and that's a plausible explanation. So I think what we do, instead of moving backwards again, we have the motion on the floor with the amendment. The way to go forward, we'll send out the invitations, we'll be very specific.
I want the specifics, what we're looking.
Yes,
The chief
exactly.
of it.
And that'll be in there.
We'll reissue it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what'll happen is we'll reschedule the meeting, and then hopefully everyone will be here. And if they're not, we'll have to deal with that at that point in time, but I think they will.
I mean, in the old days, we
I
used to
think
send,
that's,
we used to send a police officer to go get them.
Yeah.
And report them back here at their homes. I mean, we.
We used to, in the old days, we used to have a.
So I call for the question.
Actually, guys, they used to be in the back of the room.
That's in the form of a motion. We have the motion, Mr. Clerk. Motion is to grant further time in committee, re-invite these individuals back up, and also
Requesting that information.
request that all the information be on the invite as well, as we had stated, and make sure that they come to the next meeting so that they could actually bring the proper information that we need going forward, so we could get this off to the body. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Can we read the next order
All
of
right,
business?
item number 3. This is a resolution up by Council McKinnon regarding the fire and police civil service.
Okay, this is one that I spoke to Human Resources Director. He wasn't able to attend tonight due to a prior commitment, but he had given me a decision from Lynn, against the city of Lynn, on a piece that they were fighting. And this was issued to all of us. He had put a package together and gave this to us all, I believe, either hard copy or in your email address. If not, I have the hard copy here so that we can get it to you. But this is the one from Lynn that they're citing. I had conversation with him here. He said that they will maintain the ordinances that we have put in place, which is 7 years of new employment. They have to remain in the city, have a viable address, and that's what they're looking at now. So, also, he said, and I quote him, that he feels and he believes that they're now on, they're on schedule to fill these positions by civil service as well, so, which would be fire, police, I think 911 was in there as well, because we're gonna have to increase that as well, too, so that's what I got from him. Any questions? Seeing none, we're gonna refer this back to sponsor, and we'll
Second.
take this information. I have it if anybody needs a copy. It's here. That's of the Lynn Police against the town of Lynn. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so. Refer it back to sponsor for the body.
All right, item number 6. This is a resolution up by Councilors Frank Capone and Michael McLaughlin. This is on the environmental impact of plastics.
Councilman McLaughlin.
I'll yield the floor to my esteemed colleague from Ward 1, Councilor Capone.
Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, dear council colleague. This was a piece we had put in to committee a while ago about the impact of plastics on the environment. And, we had some folks up here, Katie Rogers and others, who spoke to it and showed the impact of plastics in the ocean, things of that nature. So along the way, I think Councilor McLaughlin entered a proposed ordinance with regards to balloon
Do we have
bans.
copies of the
So-
ordinance?
So I will now yield the
Thank you.
floor to my colleagues so you could discuss that.
Thank you, Councilor Capone, my dear friend. I had been approached again by some residents who were concerned about the impact of certain activities and how it would negatively impact animals in the ocean, and where if we release something into the air, where it comes down, where it may fall, and how it may impact animals and wildlife and so forth. So from that, I was able to do some research and find some ordinances that some other places had on the books here in Massachusetts. 2 of them particularly being Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, had ordinances banning certain activities from being done to protect ocean life in the animals in the water. I reviewed the ordinance. I thought it was a little harsh for what we were trying to do. We were just trying to get a handle on a situation, especially with a lot of new businesses opening and so forth. We could have a lot more of these types of events and activities occurring. So I took what they had wrote, which was extreme due to the fact that they're surrounded by water and we're not, and I modified it to make it a lesser sample to be able to have something on the books so that we can protect animals, wildlife, other creatures, and worked with our city clerk and assistant city clerk to write an ordinance that would fit into our books, and found a place that we could put it into implementation in our city charter. So with that, you've seen the ordinance that was written. I know it has been passed out several other times before tonight, and that I'm going to ask strongly that we take a stance tonight, that we support this item and refer out to the body as a whole, that we support doing what's right for animals, and that we will do all we can to protect such. So
This-
I ask for favorable action.
I'm going to actually, before that, gentlemen, let me read this. It's a preamble, release of balloons. I'm going to read just from therefore. It be ordered, Johnny, that's fine. Or do I have to read the whole free? I'm just going to read from the, whereas the festive atmosphere created by large displays of balloons can be achieved without actually releasing the balloons into the atmosphere, therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Everett that a new Section 29 is hereby amended to Chapter 3 of the revised ordinance of the City of Everett as follows. Section 29, release of balloons. A, prohibits no person shall intentionally cause rubber and/or plastic, latex, or mylar balloons inflated with any type of lighter than air gas, including but not limited to helium, to be released into the atmosphere. Disposal. B, no person shall dispose of any balloon in any manner, including release into the air, other than being contained in a trash bag and placed into the city-issued trash containers. Enforcement. C, this section may be enforced by any police officer or by the animal control officer. And that's Section C. Section D, fines. Any person or persons violating this section shall be punished in accordance with the provisions of Section 1-8 of the revised ordinance of the City of Everett. That's the full.
Mr. Chairman, and obviously, we're not out here to look to, find somebody for the first time that they may not know that this is an ordinance. We're not here to make money off of this. This isn't a money-generated item. This is really an awareness program, and it's just a tool and a technique to be able to say to somebody that is having an event that, think about outside the box a little bit. Think about things that you may not be thinking about when you're releasing those balloons into the air. And I'll be honest, I was guilty of it, right? You have an event, you have a party, you go outside and you release the balloons into the air. You never think twice about it. But once it was brought to my attention, I said, wait a minute, Katie Rogers, who spent a lot of time here talking to us on it, I said she makes a lot of sense, that they go up, they have to come back down eventually at some point, and where they're landing is impacting something or someone's life negatively. Sure. That's the reason why we put this forward, and it really is not a fine-generated ordinance, but more of a campaign of awareness across the city of Everett.
The fine structure is 1-8, so it's a regular city ordinance fine, basically. But, you go on your steps, 25, whatever, 50, okay. So, with this, are you also, as part of the, commitment to actually make exposure to this and what it's doing to the atmosphere and to the animals and stuff like that, do you want to put this out on ECTV as well?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Mr. Chairman. If we could put this onto ECTV, if we could put this onto our city website, if we could, any sort of public communication. ask
The
that
ordinance will be on the website, but as far as,
even more so, just a page, if we could scroll a page for maybe a month or 2 months
Ask
on the
ECTV.
website to be able to.
just to inform the citizens that this is
Exactly.
coming?
And
Okay.
hopefully, we'll be able to also do some sort of a press release from our office.
Once it passes, then we could get on that, but.
Okay.
We could request probably ECTV upon passage to actually do something, and then further it up from there.
So, yeah, exactly, and the strong emphasis is on public communication, and we're just awareing people of that, the fact that
Okay.
this is now on the ordinance.
Motion is for favorable action with hoping that it passes in the regular body, and once it does, then ECTV will notify the citizens of Everett. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. You have done so. Motion for adjournment. All those in favor? All those opposed? You have done so.